School lunches in the United States have become progressively worse. I mean, they've never been that great for as long as I can remember. The lunch options were so few. We could easily predict the lineup every week. We either got to pick a cold sandwich, mushy mac and cheese, or some soggy grapes. All these years, students have been posting about it on social media, voicing their concerns, and their parents kept complaining. But it seems like nothing has changed. Well, what most people don't know is who controls the school lunches in the US, as it turns out some dirty business is going on there, and big companies are just competing who profits from kids the most. To get all of that, you should know how school lunches became a thing. Well, not for long. After World War II in 1945, the United States had another battle to fight, the Cold War. To win this war, or at least have a shot, the US military would need to recruit the strongest men out there. But you see, America was barely recovering from the Great Depression at the time. This economic downturn threatened people's jobs, savings, and even their homes and farms. The men have been on a poor diet for over a decade. So where could they possibly find men fit for war? General Lewis B. Hershey went to the House of Agriculture Committee to warn them against the tragedy approaching. 40% of the military recruits weren't fit enough to pass their physical exams, and it was because of diet-related health problems. They were malnourished. So in response to General Hershey's warnings, the National School Lunch Act was established, a nationwide feeding program to turn kids into soldiers. As planned, students in the United States start getting their lunch. But where did all this food come from? Farm surpluses. Whatever farmers had in excess were taken to schools around the United States to be fed to students. Surprisingly, the program was just what the United States military needed, a move in the right direction. The kids got bigger and stronger, causing the United States military to become one of the most powerful militaries of the time. Fast forward to 1969, a fair percentage of students were having school lunch every academic week for free or at unbelievably low prices. This went on for years and slowly became the norm in the US. Parents expected the school to provide lunch for their kids, and the schools expected the government to provide lunch for the kids. But just like every tool politicians use to garner votes, the National School Lunch Program would have a budget cut. It's already ran its course. They no longer needed their super soldiers. So in 1981, schools experienced the first National School Lunch Program funding cut. President Reagan trimmed $1.46 billion from the $5.66 billion earmarked for child nutrition programs, making it difficult for schools to feed their students like they used to. The schools now had less money, so the only way out was to reduce costs. Students started receiving smaller portions, and lunches started costing more money. Then a benchmark was set based on the living income of each parent to see if they qualified for free lunches. But this wasn't really a great idea, was it? Some students had parents who were rich enough to pass this benchmark, but too poor to afford school lunch every day. This is when the school lunch crisis truly began. But behind every setback is a big business that sees a window of opportunities, lurking around to make a profit. You see, the big food companies saw the looming lunch crisis and decided it was the perfect opportunity to infiltrate the schools. They already had adults in a chokehold and were earning big bags from that market on a global scale. But the profit is never enough for these companies, is it? They always want more. So the next stage? Students. These companies now want to make a profit off the schools by selling their junk food to students. So what did they do? Big food companies like Domino's offered irresistible deals to American schools if they put their food on the menu. And it worked like this. Whenever any of the junk food is sold to the students, the school gets its share. This helped them cushion the effects of the fund cut. It was a win-win situation for the companies and the school. The big food companies now had youngsters having their junk food for lunch. Now, it wasn't the only big food companies that were feeding off the lunch crisis. The bulk food manufacturers were in on it too. As schools struggled to provide large portion lunches, they also struggled with hiring highly trained chefs who were skilled enough to cook high-quality, nutritious meals from scratch. So schools now had to depend on bulk food manufacturers like Cisco to handle the food production processes, which means more frozen, processed, and stale food. The same companies that made food for prisons and hospitals were now in charge of school lunches. So it's no surprise that the food quality and appeal slowly began to look like that. This was the point when school lunches started to go down the drain, and we still haven't recovered. Sadly, the kids are the ones who get to face the consequences of the actions of these big food companies. They are the ones that have to deal with the downsides of eating horrible, unhealthy meals for lunch almost every day. With bulk food manufacturers and big food companies controlling school lunches, kids now had to consume meals that have high sugar, fat, and salt. Although the USDA set a standard for the maximum amount of these contents in each cafeteria lunch, they never truly enforced it. But that's just a simple way to explain what happened. The truth is, the USDA didn't back off so easily. These bulk food manufacturers and big food companies had plans to colonize the school cafeteria in almost 95% of public schools, benefiting from the National School Lunch Program. Why? Students are the easiest to influence to buy their high-fat, high-sugar, high-salt meals without receiving heavy backlash every other day. To achieve this, these businesses started splurging millions of dollars on the federal government to cajole them to either weaken or change the nutritional standards. Not surprisingly, the federal government conceded. I mean, it's always about the money for the people at the top, the people who were assigned to protect and care for the kids. After finding a loophole around the set of USDA standards, these companies started selling ketchup, pizza, and french fries as vegetables. I mean, ketchup and these other junks are indeed made out of vegetables, but the preservatives and high unhealthy fat content of these meals pretty much beats out the whole point of encouraging students to have fruits and vegetables on their food trays. However, in 2010, the big food companies and their industry associations faced their biggest threat yet, the Healthy, Hunger-Free Kids Act, signed into law by ex-President Barack Obama. The act was signed to strengthen nutrition standards for meals, beverages, and snacks provided through the National School Lunch and Breakfast programs. Students were offered things such as fruits and vegetables daily to increase the amount of whole grains and other nutrients in their diets. The act sought to foster healthy changes in the school lunch options, the same changes parents were trying so hard to maintain at home, so kids can grow stronger, healthier, and smarter. Believe it or not, big food manufacturers kind of reacted positively to this act. It was a threat to their business, so they had to quickly adapt to these changes. In response, they created compliant versions of the usual snacks like Doritos, Cheetos, and other popular snacks. These copycat items were somewhat healthier than what they sold at the stores. This way, they were able to stay in business and stay afloat. However, the progress of the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act was cut short during Trump's administration. Once the Obama era was over, the USDA took this act 10 steps back. First, they slowed down the implementation of strict sodium standards, whole grains, and sweetened milk. But that wasn't enough. They approved low-fat milk for children participating in school meal programs, and reduced the number and variety of vegetables and fruits, leaving students with more processed, saltier, and fattier food options. Now, the dumbing down of the standards set by the Healthy Hunger-Free Kid Act didn't just take things back to where we started. Instead, it actually made things worse. The bulk food manufacturers successfully eliminated scratch cooking, and kids only had to eat frozen and heavily processed meals. One of the bulk food manufacturers that infiltrated the school's cafeteria was Lunchables.
Lunchables will soon become a part of school lunch programs as the USDA is pushing for healthier lunches.
Reports have shown that this ultra-processed prepackaged lunch kit has concerning sodium levels and harmful chemicals like lead and cadmium that could contribute to several health issues in kids over time. Although Lunchables served at schools have been made to be quote-unquote less harmful, so to say, they still contain deleterious ingredients. It is packed with carcinogens like sodium nitrates and glyphosate sprayed wheat that put your kids at risk of prostate and breast cancer. Now, because of these clearly unhealthy lunch options, students are becoming overweight. The number of obese teenagers keeps increasing, putting them at risk of chronic diseases like diabetes, heart disease, kidney stones, and cancer. Some real scary stuff. A lunch program created to transform kids into strong soldiers has taken a turn due to bad leadership and greed, and is now deteriorating the health of kids it sought to protect. We don't have to wait till the next World War to care about what our students eat again. Every student in America deserves better. Anyways, that's all I have for you today, and if you haven't already, please hit that like button, and I'll see you in the next video.